Imagine waking up one day to find that the very center of the world has completely moved. Well, that's essentially what is happening to the global economy right under our noses. Welcome to today's Explainer. We're unpacking a really fascinating working paper from the Economic Advisory Council to the Prime Minister of India. It maps out global economic trends from 1992 all the way to 2025 and even projects out to 2030. It's like watching the tectonic plates of global wealth shifting in real time over the last 3 decades.
Here is our roadmap for today. 1. Measuring the global economy. 2. The West versus Asia. 3. India's rise to 8.2%. And 4. The per capita reality check.
Section 1. Measuring the global economy. Establishing the rules of the game. So, first things first, let's ask ourselves a pretty vital question. Who really dominates when we strip away the fluctuating illusion of currency exchange rates? Because when you hear about GDP on the nightly news, it's almost always in nominal terms, and that can be heavily skewed by how strong or weak a local currency is against the US dollar at any given moment. But honestly, that doesn't really tell us how much a country is actually producing or consuming in the real world.
To get to the actual truth, we rely on Purchasing Power Parity, or PPP. It asks a simple, everyday question: what can your money actually buy locally? By ironing out those price differences, we get a much truer picture of the world economic pie and who is literally taking home the biggest slices. The data we're diving into today uses IMF figures based strictly on this PPP metric, and it starts from 1992, right after the Soviet Union collapsed, which gives us a really solid modern baseline.
Section 2. The West versus Asia, the shifting center of gravity.
Okay, let's zoom way out for a second. Look at Angus Madison's historical data going all the way back to the year 0 AD. 2,000 years ago, India alone accounted for nearly a third of the global economy. That's 32.9%. China held 26.2%. Total Asia? An undisputed 76.3% of global GDP. So keep this in the back of your mind as we go through the numbers today. The rapid rise of Asia that we're seeing right now isn't really a new phenomenon. Historically speaking, it is actually a massive return to the long-term baseline.
Fast forward to our 1992 baseline, and man, the modern contrast is absolutely stark. The United States was the undisputed heavyweight champion, holding almost a fifth, 19.7% of the entire world's GDP in PPP terms, while China was sitting way down at just 4%. But look at the reality of 2025. China has fundamentally flipped the script. It now holds 19.6% of the global economy, officially passing the US, which has fallen to 14.6%. We're talking about an incredible reshaping of the global order in just a single generation.
Now, because the global economic pie is, well, exactly 100%, the dramatic rise of the East meant someone had to lose ground. And that has been a steady, secular decline for legacy European economies over the last 3 decades. Take Germany. Its global share has basically been cut in half, dropping from 6% in 1992 down to just 2.9% today. Italy fell from 4% to a mere 1.8%, literally falling out of the top 10 economies entirely. It's definitely a humbling reality check for the West.
And seeing it laid out visually is just mind-blowing. You can literally watch the bands representing the United States and Europe narrowing over time, shrinking right along with their global share. Meanwhile, the sections for China and India physically expand across the last 30 years to completely swallow up the GDP share that the West used to hold. It is a literal visual takeover of the global economic landscape.
Section 3. India's rise to 8.2%, a dramatic return to the global stage.
8.2%. This isn't just a random statistic. It is a massive, definitive slice of the global GDP pie that India has claimed for 2025. This incredible surge has made India the third largest economy in the world in purchasing power parity terms, decisively leapfrogging legacy giants like Japan and Germany.
And the journey to get to that 8.2% share is staggering. Back in 1992, India held just 3.2% of the pie. But through relentless compounding growth of over 7.3% every single year for over 3 decades, they've completely transformed their economic weight. And get this, the momentum isn't slowing down. By 2030, the IMF projects India will command nearly 10% of the entire world economy. That isn't just typical growth, it's a deep structural transformation. India is quite literally absorbing a larger and larger share of global output, savings, and investments year over year.
Section 4. The per capita reality check. Looking beyond overall GDP.
Now,
As much as macro GDP shares have shifted massively to the east, we've got to look at the reality on the ground. When we look at individual wealth levels, meaning the per capita income relative to the world average, it tells a totally different story about global disparity. Total GDP is really about national power, right? But per capita GDP is about individual, everyday prosperity.
So here is the crucial catch. While India holds that incredibly powerful 8.2% overall global share, that wealth is being spread across a massive population. Because of that, the average individual income in India is still only 0.45 times the world average, less than half. Contrast that with the United States. Sure, the US might be losing macro scale globally, but its citizens remain profoundly wealthy at 3.4 times the global average.
But, context is everything here. Back in 1992, an average Indian citizen's income in PPP terms was sitting at just 18% of the global average. Jumping all the way to 45% today represents an exceptional, truly life-changing upward trajectory for hundreds of millions of people. But it also clearly proves that there's still a very long, steep road ahead to reach true prosperity parity with the West.
So, we've seen how dramatically the world has changed since 1992. The West has ceded massive ground, China has risen to the top spot, and India has surged to an undeniable 8.2% share, rapidly climbing the ranks. I'm going to leave you with this final thought. If the global economic pie has shifted this radically in just 30 years, completely rewriting the rules of global wealth, whose slice do you think will be the biggest by 2050? Thanks so much for joining me on this explainer, and as always, keep questioning the data.